So, folks, we gotta just give a little update about what's going on in Gaza, and it's not good. It's in fact bad. As many of you may have heard by now, Israel has announced a plan to occupy the entirety of Gaza City, because ultimately the aim of this entire conflict was, in fact, to do that. It was to annex and retake the Gaza Strip and make it part of Israel. Like that has been the goal of this entire endeavor. Israel said early Friday that it plans to take over Gaza City in another escalation. The decision, taken after a late-night meeting of top officials, came despite mounting international calls to end the war and protests by many in Israel who feared the remaining hostages held by Hamas. Israel's air and ground war has already killed tens of thousands of people in Gaza, displaced most of the population, etc. And as the AP points out rather bluntly, another major ground operation would almost certainly exacerbate the humanitarian catastrophe. And that's, again, the very kind way of very charitable way of phrasing that. It would exacerbate the situation. Yeah, it's just going to get a lot worse. Worth noting that several paragraphs into this piece, there's a section titled, "There is nothing left to occupy." There's nothing left to occupy, said Mesa al-Haila, who's living in a displacement camp. There is no Gaza left. And it's just asked in an interview with Fox News ahead of the security cabinet meeting if Israel would take control of all of Gaza. Netanyahu replied, "We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas from there." And again, it is just the intent. They're having real estate conventions to talk about where the new settlements in Gaza are going to be. There is no subtlety. If you pay attention to what is actually going on in Israeli media about this, there's no subtlety to it whatsoever. It is just simply a push to ethnically cleanse the land and kill as many of them as possible. It is quite bad, and I have to point this out. If you're still on the edge here, now we have mercenaries working for the aid distribution sites that operate within Gaza, talking about how there are people just shooting children. There are American mercenaries going over there, and I gotta tell you guys, these mercenaries, they're not wild lefties like me. They're coming back and they're talking about watching children with their faces still wet from tears being gunned down while coming to get food. We have doctors who are serving there coming back with horror stories about emaciated children dying under their care. There are stories of aid workers who have gone there and starved themselves to try and give whatever food they have to the people of Gaza. This is not, and I have to mention this. This is not for all that many supporters of Israel might try and make you believe. This is not, in fact, all some work of Pallywood, a conspiracy theory that says the Palestinians are all faking it. It's all footage recycled from Syria. Again, they call it Pallywood or Gaza Wood. And the starvation is happening. The manufactured famine is happening. It is what has allowed these aid distribution sites to become killing fields. This is a statement from Doctors Without Borders, one of the most reputable aid organizations on the planet. US-backed aid distribution points in Gaza are sites of orchestrated killing. The so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is a deadly scheme that must be dismantled. People need access to food and life-saving aid now. And that's because the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is paid for by the IDF. It is a deliberate ploy to funnel Palestinians into specific killing zones, into, active war zones in the Strip. This is not aid, this is orchestrated killing. A new report from Doctors Without Borders documents the horrors witnessed by MSF staff at 2 clinics in Gaza that regularly received mass influxes of casualties following violence at sites run by the GHF, an Israeli-US proxy that has militarized food distribution, which is, incidentally, why these sites were employing mercenaries. Remember, we covered that mercenary talking with a sitting US senator, and he talked about witnessing Israeli troops ordering snipers to fire on children. Yeah, and depraved ambiance. Worth noting that under GHF there are 4 aid distribution sites, when under the UN there were 400. An analysis of MSF medical data, patient testimonies, and first-hand medical witnessing at the 2 clinic points point to targeted and indiscriminate violence by Israeli forces and private American contractors against starved Palestinians at food distribution sites run by the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. These sites are of orchestrated killing and dehumanization. Between June 7th and July 24th, 1,380 casualties, including 28 dead, were received at MSF's Al-Mawasi and Al-Attar clinics in southern Gaza near GHF-run distribution sites. During those 7 weeks, MSF teams treated 71 children for gunshot wounds, 25 of whom were under the age of 15. Faced with no alternatives to find food, starved families frequently sent teenage boys into this lethal environment, as they are often the only males in the household physically able to make the journey. Patients have included a 12-year-old boy hit by a bullet that had passed all the way through his abdomen, and 5 young girls, one of whom was only 8 years old and suffered a gunshot wound to her chest. Injury patterns suggest intentional fire. In MSF's nearly 54 years of operation, rarely have we seen such levels of systematic violence against unarmed civilians, said Raquel Ayora, MSF General Director. The GHF distribution sites masquerading as aid have morphed into a laboratory of cruelty. Children shot in the chest while reaching for food, people crushed or suffocated in stampedes, and entire crowds gunned down at distribution points. This must stop now. There is no way to describe the murder of children as anything but intentional. Despite the condemnations and calls for dismantling it, the global inaction to stop GHF is baffling. According to Aitor Zabalagoga Zekoa, I apologize for that pronunciation, MSF Emergency Coordinator in Gaza. An initial analysis of the gunshot wounds among patients arriving at Al-Mawasi Clinic found that 11% of the gunshot injuries were to the head and neck, while 19% were to areas covering the chest, abdomen, and back. By contrast, people arriving from the Khan Yunis distribution center were far more likely to arrive with gunshot wounds to the lower limbs. The distinct patterns and anatomical precision of these injuries strongly suggests the intentional targeting of people within and around the distribution sites, rather than accidental or indiscriminate fire. We're being slaughtered, said Mohammed Riyad Tabasi, a patient who was treated at MSF's Al-Mawasi clinic. I've been injured maybe 10 times. I saw it with my own eyes, about 20 corpses around me, all of them shot in the head, in the stomach. The GHF must be immediately dismantled. The GHF began operating in May after Israeli authorities sought to dismantle the UN-led humanitarian response and replace it with a militarized food distribution scheme. All 4 GHF-run distribution sites are in areas under full Israeli military control and are secured by private American armed contractors. Instead of ending the siege and letting in aid trucks that are sitting on the other side of the borders, the Israeli and US government's innovative solution of the GHF was supposed to be an answer to their unproven claims of aid diversion in Gaza and unfounded accusations of UN failure. However, the GHF is nothing but a deadly scheme, institutionalizing the Israeli policy of starvation as a weapon of war in Gaza. Israel has imposed a full siege on Gaza since March 2nd as part of his ongoing genocidal campaign. The way this scheme operates attempts to strip people of their dignity. Over the 7 weeks, MSF teams treated 196 patients with injuries following chaotic scrambles at the GHF distribution sites. Patients included a 5-year-old boy with severe head injuries and a woman who died of asphyxiation, likely caused by the suffocating crush of a crowd. Yeah, this is like a medieval vice, meant to just crush them to death. I mean, it's a siege with the intent of killing everyone. Palestinians who managed to secure any food at the sites often face the risk of violent looting and theft of aid by other starving people. MSF medical teams were required to add a new acronym to the patient registry, BBO, beaten by others. This refers to people injured either by the crush of the crowd or by being beaten and robbed of their supplies immediately after receiving them. On August 1st, the same day, the U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East visited the GHF sites. 15-year-old Mohammed Jamal al-Attar was attacked around the Al-Shakush GHF site while trying to get food. He arrived at the MSF Al-Mawasi clinic after being shot in the chest. We treat only a fraction of the total number of people killed and injured at these sites. There is no way to describe the murder of children as anything but intentional. Between July 27th and August 2nd, 186 people with wounds from gunshots, shrapnel, assaults, or stabbings were treated in MSF's Al-Mawasi or Al-Attar clinics after being wounded at GHF sites. 2 of them died. On August 3rd, MSF clinics received 3 more wounded people, one of whom who had been shot in the neck and 2 with shots to the head. MSF calls for the immediate dismantling of the GHF scheme, the restoration of the UN coordinated aid delivery mechanism, and for governments, especially the United States, as well as private donors, to suspend all financial and political support for the GHF. Israel must also end its siege so that people can access food and other life-saving humanitarian aid, and that can be immediately scaled up. As the occupying power, Israeli authorities are responsible for ensuring the rapid, unimpeded, and safe delivery of humanitarian aid at the level sufficient to address people's needs. Really bad. And to bring us back to the understatement of the century, let's go back to that AP article. Another major ground operation would almost certainly exacerbate the humanitarian catastrophe. So in the middle of this, where we have children being shot, starving children being shot, in a deliberate mechanism to do just that, there's going to be another major offensive into these areas where there are starving, injured, dying people. It's a genocide. Like, I'm sorry. Doctors Without Borders calls it that. Genocide scholars call it that. Historians of the Holocaust and survivors of the Holocaust call it that. It is happening right now. And we here in the U.S. are complicit. Why sorry? Because it's a genocide. I don't know if there's any other way to feel about it. Like sorry, angry. Yeah, I'm fucking sorry that it's happening. That video of the kids fucked me up. The fucking image, the fucking 2 photographs of that child that mercenary brought back fucking broke me. Can we do a general strike yet? Sadly, no. I mean, we can, just the coordination is not there. Why are we just standing by? Like, why are the leaders of the world watching like it's no big deal? Well, because it's not happening to them, you know? They have their own, like, political worries. What would a general strike take? It would take coordination, at the very least, between the major unions. As far as I'm aware, that's not happening. It would take preparation. Because again, when we're talking about a general strike, it means people going weeks without a paycheck. And a lot of people can't do that. You know, they don't have the savings themselves, or they don't have the strike funds in order to make that happen, you know? And that's a huge, huge problem. I know it's a tired talking point, but like, the saying is something, not the saying, but like the stats show that like most Americans can't, like they don't have like more than a couple $100 for an emergency, and like if you don't go to work, you don't get to keep your house, you don't get to keep your apartment. There's a discussion at the DSA National Convention about prepping for a general strike in 2028. Things like getting labor leaders and politicians organized into supporting it. Never a better time to get into DSA. I'm all for that. By the way. Like, a general strike in 2028 is maybe the most realistic plan that I have seen, largely because Sean Fain with the UAW has been coordinating to some degree with other unions for 2028 to be a massive renegotiation of huge union contracts. So that's possible, but like
defending Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, they unironically have proven why the state of Israel should never have existed.
Yeah, I mean, like it is Like, if you are trying to maintain an ethnic majority of any kind, like, that's hugely problematic, right? Like, I don't support an ethno state of any kind. Saki Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. Long-term crowdfunding for a strike? I mean, yeah, but it would also matter who is managing and how that fund is managed. The potential for abuse is quite large, right? That being said, Sean Fain scheduling a bunch of union contracts to be renewed in 2028 deliberately to set up the possibility of collective bargaining between the unions and multiple companies. And I think that has the highest likelihood that that could turn into something much larger. Otherwise, like, we have to get to an economic for there to be like a natural bubbling up of like a general strike without that kind of union organizing power. What you're looking at is essentially economic conditions that are worse than like the Great Depression for people to be willing to organize like that and just kind of accept that they're going to be economically fucked until they win. And people just aren't there yet, you know? People are not willing to lose their homes or lose their ability to like get their kid medical care or keep their parents in like the retirement home. They're not, like, people can't do that. And unless the economy gets so bad that most people are in the boat of like, we're already fucked, what do we have to lose? Like, they're not going to do that. So either massive union coordination or the entire economy just fucking collapses. DSA is where you need to get involved in now to build your support network, build not just for the midterms, but for 2028 and everything in between. Yeah. I mean, you need to get involved in some kind of political organizing apparatus now, chat. That's why I've been saying for the last year now, like, get involved in your local level politics, because you gotta do that. You gotta do it or die. Like, that's kind of the point here.
Riverboat deck is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.